not me picking the sunniest, nicest day that we've had in ages and looking kind of goth. I guess that's not really anything out of the ordinary though, so... Hello everyone, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I want to talk about underrated romantasy books and romantasy books that I personally feel actually deliver, because I've heard a lot of discourse recently about romantasy books just not hitting the same as they used to, and while I agree, there are still some really good ones out there that you might not have heard of. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. New videos every single Monday and a lot of shorts in between that too. The first book I want to talk about, or the first series rather, is the Blood Gift duology. People on Book Talk are probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but I'm going to keep yapping about it because I never hear anyone talking about it, and it is so good. It's about Ikenna, who lives in a society that is very restricted, and her granddad, who is her only family, dies, and she believes he dies in mysterious circumstances. So she tries to join the elite training military academy to uncover more about his death. In the process of joining this academy, she must undergo military trials, and of course that means it has like the deadly trials and games aspect. I do personally feel like this is still really unique though and original, not like some books that recently have come out with deadly trials and challenges. I would say that this kind of feels like the dystopian books we used to get in the 2000s, like Hunger Games and Divergent, but make it adult with spice. It's a completed duology as well, so you can just binge it and know that it's finished and not have to wait for the final book. It's already there, it's completed. I will say that this book does have triggers that you should check before you read it. It deals with on-page racism as well, so if that's something that you prefer not to read, then maybe skip this one. But it is just such a fast-paced, addictive book with so many different characters and kind of like a found family trope as well. It's kind of got an enemies to lovers subplot, but again, I would say that this is not the spiciest and not the most romance driven compared to some that I'm going to talk about. It's a smaller subplot, but it definitely is still there, and in my opinion, it's enough to satisfy the romantasy bug. The next book I'm going to talk about is House of Bane and Blood. I absolutely love this book, and again, it is book one in a completed duology, so you can just binge it, you can read it to your heart's delight, there's no waiting around. This is one of the most unique books I have ever read. It's inspired by Peaky Blinders, so the world that is created is very inspired by the Industrial Revolution. It also has steampunk gas lamp vibes, which I just feel like is super rare in big fantasy romance books. And obviously with it being inspired by Peaky Blinders, if you love Cillian Murphy and Tommy Shelby, then you're going to love Nico because he has that vibe too. The city that they live in is also like split into two with rival gangs and rival families. One of those rival families is Camilla's family and the other one is Nico's, and they end up in a marriage of convenience to strengthen their own businesses and their business assets. And so it has such delightful tension and angst because they dislike each other and their families dislike each other, and now they've suddenly found themselves in a marriage of convenience, and Camilla especially is not happy about it. As well as the unique world, this has one of the most unique magic systems I've ever read. It's a little bit tricky to get your head around at first, but if you like high fantasy, you'll probably have no problem with it. It has a guide in the front to help you as well. I would say that the magic almost reminds me of the Grishaverse. It's very individual to the person, and there are gods and goddesses. It's full of action, it's full of crime, it's just gritty, it's magical, it's spicy, it's tense, it's everything you could want in a romantasy. A recent book that I have loved in the romantasy genre is A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. This is very much giving all of the best romantasy tropes. It's easy, it's cheesy, but it's super fun and the romance is great. I did this on audio as well, and I have to say the audio is really good. It's dual narration, and the male narrator that does the male main character sounds delightfully Northern English, which is my vibe. And I love to see that. I love to see that representation, okay? When something's like a medieval fantasy and it has American narration, I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. But anyway, this is a book where the world contains dragons that have been hunted to extinction. The people are so threatened by the dragons, they have rid the world of them. They've hunted them to the ends of the earth, and they believe that dragons no longer exist. Our female main character, Tamsin, is basically adopted into like the royal family, but she's not actually part of the royal family, and she is treated as the sort of scapegoat and lowly servant, and she just has a miserable life. Almost reminds me a little bit of Poppy in From Blood and Ash. One day she's forced into a marriage with the son of the famous dragon slayer, and she's not happy about it, but she has to do it, and so she ends up going into his kingdom and living with him after they are betrothed. But she also has some weird, unusual things happening to her and some secrets, and you can probably see where this is going. But it was such a good book. It was so fun, really fast paced. It's not too long, so nothing is dragged out. This is the fairy loot version, by the way, which is so pretty. But the story is really great, especially if you do like that forced proximity, enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience vibe. And obviously dragons are such a fun addition to any romantasy, in my opinion. Don't know if you would consider these next two strictly romantasy, maybe more paranormal romance, but to me they kind of fall under the same umbrella, so I'm gonna include them. That is the Tales of the Weeping Hollow series. So book 1 is Hollow Heathens and book 2 is Bone Island. I absolutely devoured these, ate them up, loved them. They are interconnected standalones in an anthology series. It's an incomplete series, but because they are interconnected standalones, you do get like a conclusion at the end of each of them, which makes you feel like you're not necessarily waiting for the next book. Book 1, Hollow Heathens, follows Fallon, who basically goes to this town where she was born to care for her elderly sick granddad. But she's never been to this town since she left it when she was a baby, and she's always been like kept apart from her family. When she gets there, she finds that the town is super weird, isolated, creepy, and it actually seems as if it's magic because it tries to keep her from leaving as well. But while she's there, she discovers that there are 4 men who are masked, and they are masked constantly with animal skulls. And so she's like, this is weird, what's going on? And she finds out that they are leaders of a coven, and then there is another coven who are rivals with them. She keeps finding herself drawn to one particular cursed masked member of said coven, but she's meant to stay away from him, and there are reasons why the town is also getting involved trying to keep them apart. It's such a spooky, witchy vibe. It is honestly perfect for autumn, but it's just so good that you should just read it at any time as well. Because the town is this like isolated, sleepy hollow vibe, it does have this like Southern American charm too, and you feel like you're there because it's so atmospheric. It's like a creepy, witchy version of Gilmore Girls almost, with in terms of the town being kind of like Stars Hollow. But my absolute favourite thing about this was the characters, specifically the love interest. He has quickly become one of my all-time favourite male main characters. So that's book 1, Hollow Heathens, and then we have Bone Island, which follows 2 characters who are mentioned in book 1 and how they come to be in a relationship of sorts as well. It still continues a thread of the storyline that is in book 1, and it has the same witchy, gothic, dark vibes. I would actually say that book 2 is a little bit darker than book 1 as well, and spicier. I would also say that the writing and the plot overall is better than book 1. I gave book 1 4.5 stars, and I gave book 2 5 stars. Book 2 has a really unusual romance, I would say. It's not one that's as easily defined by tropes, but it is beautiful, and it is a very poetic story. If you do like things that have a gothic, poetic vibe edge to them, you will like this a lot. My original mic just died, which is really not surprising when you consider that I am probably the most unorganized content creator in existence. So apologies if there is any change in sound, but back to the video. The next one I'm going to talk about is also a recent addition to my read list, and that is Ruin by Gillian Eliza West. This is book 1 in the Infernus duology. It's not completed yet, but I believe that book 2 comes out in April, so it's not that far away at all. But this is about a girl who has been cursed by the bite of a demon when she's a child, which means that now she can no longer touch anyone or be touched without killing the person. So for 245 years, she has not been able to touch someone. But one day her powers get the best of her and she ends up causing some damage and going way out of control, and the god of her kingdom kicks her out. As a result of that, she finds herself in the kingdom of a rival god and king who she has always been taught is evil. Of course, everything is not always as it seems, and she quickly learns that the king and the god that she has always lived with might not have been who she thought he was, and that actually maybe he is the oppressor. So this one does feel quite familiar in some ways. I wouldn't say it's the most original plot in the world. I gave it 4 stars, but it was still super fun, and I know a lot of other people that love it too. One of my favourite things about this is that it has a Hades and Persephone vibe. If you like Plated Prisoner or A Touch of Darkness, this book kind of feels like a mixture of the two, and so I'd really recommend it for fans of either of those series. And also because it is a duology, it's quite fast paced. The world, the magic, the powers, it's not too complex to get your head around, which means you can just easily read it and fly through it. But I really like the romance, and I do like the world that is created. It does have some romanticy favourite tropes in there too, but I don't want to say what they are because I feel like it's kind of spoilery. But just know, if you like a lot of the big popular romanticy series and you're looking for something with that vibe, you will get it in this one. Girlies, if you love Zodiac Academy and you haven't read the Age of Vampires series yet, what are you doing? These are by the same authors, the Twisted Sisters. We know them, we love them, and they deliver with this series too. This is actually a series they published before Zodiac Academy, but they have recently re-edited it, added more spice, added more grit, and republished them again. It's a completed series of 6 books, and they are all on Kindle Unlimited. It's set in a dystopian world where humans are seen as cattle in a vampire-led society. That is one of my favourite things to read about. I love books where vampires are the bad guys and they're in charge and humans are like cattle. Our main characters are twins, so we do get that again, like in Zodiac Academy, but they are split up. One of our twins is taken to be included in this vampire ritual. The other twin manages to escape, and so she is determined to save her sister from the vampires. Both of them end up making unlikely alliances, and both of them are fighting to get back to each other and to survive. There's forbidden romance in this, there is Norse mythology, and you know what this book series really reminds me of? The originals, as in the Vampire Diaries spin-off. So if you like the Vampire Diaries world and the Vampire Diaries history, you will love this because there are some elements of it that really remind me of the Michelson siblings. I'm going to put that down, my hand is hurting, it's heavy. But I have to say that this has some of the most delicious forbidden romance I have ever read. And if you like a brooding, toxic, alpha male love interest, you are going to love these. I will say that the first book, the first sort of quarter of the book is quite slow. Once you get past that, you're good to go, and they are super easy to read. They're very addictive and very fast paced. If you do like that sort of dystopian element to your magic and your world, you will absolutely love these. Another underrated romantasy that you could also say is kind of like gothic paranormal romance is Autumn of the Grimoire, and this is book 1 in the Sister Solstice series. So each book is interconnected, they follow a different sister, and each sister is related to a season, and they are witches. So the first book is the Autumn Witch, Agatha, and it follows her journey as her spell book gives her a mission and a task that she must do, and that mission and task takes her to a prince. It's deliciously gothic, there is tension, there is royals and court politics, and if you like that typical Halloween sort of witch autumnal vibe, you are going to love this. The world and the description makes you feel like you are there. There are bats, there are pumpkins, you know, there are just all those elements of traditional witchcraft. Also, our characters are super interesting and super likable. I think about the male lead love interest quite often, and I would love to continue this series soon. I will continue this series soon, but I've just had, you know, other things, arcs, whatever it may be, that means I've just not managed to read on with this series yet. And then I'm going to finish off today's video with This Vicious Grace, which is actually a young adult romantasy. I love this book. I had the opportunity of getting this as an arc 2 years ago, I think, a long time ago, and I still think about it all the time. It follows our main character, Eliza. She is selected to be the next Fenestra, The Fenestra is someone who must protect their island from a deadly swarm of demons that happens every 100 years. But in order to be able to protect the island, she needs to marry someone who can amplify her powers. The only problem is each of her husbands so far she has killed, and it's not working. She is not able to amplify her powers. As the impending demon swarm looms, she is getting desperate. Citizens of where she lives are turning on her. They don't believe that she can save them, and she is getting attacked. So, to protect herself, she hires a bodyguard. The bodyguard, Dante, is just a local young man, who is quite mysterious. He's had a hard life, and he ends up protecting her as she tries to solve this problem and tries to grow her powers. This one is so stinking cute. I absolutely love the vibe that is created in this. It's an Italian inspired world with Italian lore and magic, and it's just so beautiful. You feel like you're there in this sunny Italian village, and you can picture the lemon trees. It's just really immersive. There's also a really great found family trope, and I really love the almost like X-Men vibes that it has in the second half of the book. The romance is also really, really cute because you feel like they really get to know each other and it's not just tension and lust. This also has ADHD representation, although it's not exclusively written on page. The author has confirmed it herself, and it is own voices representation because the author also has ADHD. Because of that, there's some mental health themes in the second half that literally made me sob. I was not expecting that. It's the first book in a completed duology. I will say book 2 was not as good as book 1 for me. I gave it 4 stars, but book 1 was a 5-star for me. I do think that I was biased with the 5-star rating because I just loved the mental health rep and related to it so strongly, but I still think it's going to be really enjoyable and a cozy, wholesome read for a lot of people. So there you have it, a lot of underrated romantasy books that I personally feel are strong books for romantasy lovers. I hope you read some of them if you haven't already. I would love to know what you think of them if you do. Please drop a comment below if you've already read any of them and tell me what you thought of them. Maybe we have some in common. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week for another video on Monday. Love you. Bye.